Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So I'm going to teach you guys how to take these Xvive units apart for when it comes time to change your batteries. And this is very delicate. If you screw up, you could actually break your unit. I'll be honest, it's my second time doing this video. I'd taken the other one apart, everything went smooth. When I went to put it back together, the switch was just out a little bit when I snapped the casing back together, and it busted my internal switch. Okay, so this is very delicate to do, and so now my switch no longer operates, so this unit is now trash. That's a $180 unit down the tubes. Anyways, try number two. But you gotta know how to do this, that's the thing. And I've had these things apart before and I've never had an issue. Because I have another set that I had a problem with, and I had to take them apart, and I figured out how to do it, and everything went fine and smooth, so no big deal. This is the first time I've had a problem. So just keep in mind that if you mess this up, you're gonna trash your unit. So be very careful doing this. So you need a fine screwdriver to start with, because you gotta push in to the collar here and spread the collar a bit, and then you're going to need a wider screwdriver to finish popping that out carefully. Do not stick a screwdriver anywhere near this slot to try and pry it, because you will mess up the collar, and then you're going to have yet another problem to deal with. So the first screw to come out is actually this one for the collar. And then you got to get these collars out of the way, so that comes out. This collar here, also just wiggle it out, and just like that. Now you get two more screws to take apart. And these are a different length screw. Now these batteries should last you for, well, a good few years anyways, depending on how much you use your units. I use mine all the time just because I hate guitar cables since I got these Xvive units. And I love these units. They work beautiful for on-stage performing, and even just in my studio, they're great. Okay, so next thing we got to do is we got to start from the front end here. And we got to divide right up in the top area. So again, take a very thin profile screwdriver, dig in right in here. Okay, I would zoom the video in more, but I want to make sure that I keep everything in frame here for you guys. Now once you get that spread a little bit, take a slightly wider screwdriver and then just dig in and just kind of spread it a little bit. Okay, this one will already have started to spread. And just keep going down it like so, and then that cover comes off. Now your button here has some forks that are sitting upright. They have to go the same way. Same as your switch, has to go back in exactly the same way. Alright, so there's a little cutout slot. It has to face up, okay, or to the bottom, whoops, or to the bottom of the cover, okay. That's how that has to go in. Now, the next thing you got to do is you're going to have to pry this battery off the board. Now, I'm not going to pry this one, but I'll show you what I'm talking about here on this unit. It's got to be like a hot glue or something that they've used, but it's really sticky, okay? And you don't want to get a screwdriver blade on this battery, because even if your battery is kind of had the biscuit, it's still going to have voltage there, and if you puncture a lithium polymer battery, you're going to spark it and you're going to start a fire. Okay, that is not going to be cool. So try and keep sharp objects away. Get something like a feeler gauge, get the thickest feeler gauge you've got, and go into the bottom side of it and just kind of wedge it, kind of like, almost like a knife blade kind of thing, and just wedge it back and forth. And keep doing that. And don't pull up at the board. Keep your finger down on the bottom of the board somehow, like at the back side, like this. And just gently pull up, okay? Just gently. Get under there a little bit and then just gently pull up. Work it around the other end. Now, eventually you're going to create enough lift that you can just get under this battery and use your fingers, and you're going to be pushing down at the board at the same time you're pulling up at the battery. And you have to work this. It's going to take you a while to do it. Alright? Now, there's positive and negative leads. The whole board unit has to come out of this thing in order to get at the battery. So you've got 2 more screws in here. So just undo this cable, put it out to the side there, grab your screwdriver, make sure that your Phillips head screwdriver fits these screws absolutely perfectly, okay? There's no room for any slop, because if you screw up the heads on the screws, you'll either not get them out or you'll not get them back in properly. And I also use magnetic screwdrivers because in this way the screw will stay. So now you can lift this whole board out. So assuming you did your job right, you're going to end up like this. And you should already have your battery free. Okay, but if you don't and you're going to do it this way, be very careful. Grab the board by the edges and just keep working at that battery with your fingers. And that glue will let go. It's kind of like the world's strongest sticky tape, okay, if you know what I mean. This stuff it will pull away from the board. There's nothing on the bottom of the board that you're going to harm underneath the battery itself, as you can see on this one, okay. There's nothing there to harm, but don't stick sharp objects under there, because if you mess up the board, you're going to not have a working unit again. And if you puncture the battery, like I said, you could start a fire. So this is where you got to be very careful. Now, the battery is soldered on the underside, and you're going to need a very fine tip soldering iron, okay? Something around 15 watts is still fine for wattage power, because you got to be able to melt the solder. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to disconnect one wire from the battery. Then you're going to take your new battery and you're going to insert that same color wire that you just took out. Get that in there. Then you disconnect the other battery wire, okay, from here. And then throw that battery aside. Take your other wire, pop it in there, and solder it in place. And then it's just a matter of taking some double-sided sticky tape, preferably not micro-thin stuff, but the stuff that has just a little tiny bit of foam to it, just a hair, okay? Because you only got limited space here. But then you put that double-sided sticky stuff onto your battery, and then stick the battery onto the board. And you don't have to worry about doing the battery part onto the board until after you reinsert the board into your unit. But these are a bugger to pull these batteries. Now, I have never had to change a battery yet in an Xvive unit. I've done them in the Joyo units, and they were not near as bad as this to try and get the battery to let go. But it does take a little bit of convincing, a little bit of prying, you know, and being careful about it. Same thing as what I said about, you know, you got to be careful with anything metal that you put under here. If you've got something that's a hard, stiff plastic, that would work best. So you just got to be careful about it. I'm still prying at this battery because I want to break it free. It's almost undone. This does take a bit. It's something that you got to have a lot of patience for. And if you don't have patience, get somebody who does. So I've got some of that lifted. So now all I'm doing is pushing the edge down on this, kind of like a knifing action. I'm not sawing it, I'm just pushing down in on it. Some people would say this is more hassle than it's worth, but to be honest, these things, depending where you buy them, sell for up to $180. So you can replace the batteries. It's a lot cheaper to replace batteries than it is to replace your unit. Now I got a good view of what's going on here. Now, I said don't stick anything sharp in there, and I wasn't kidding, but I can see exactly what's happening here, so I can see where the glue is. And I'm only pushing at the glue itself with the tip of my screwdriver here. And you gotta hold firm on this board at the same time when you're putting force on this battery. And trust me, you're going to be putting some force on that battery. So it's starting to, there we go. Now I can get that free. You'll see where the glue spreads apart, and you just want to get at the glue itself. Voila, that's free. Alright. So, there's residue left behind, which is fine. Don't try and take it off the board with anything other than just your thumb, and just push up against it, and you can peel it off the board. It's not a big deal. You want this stuff gone off the board before you try and lay down any new tape down on it. I don't know why they would use hot glue or whatever kind of stuff this is, because that's ridiculous. Cheap double-sided sticky tape would have been the best solution. Okay, so that's all off, and our battery is freed. Oh, now this is different. They actually got a ground or something going off this battery to the board. What the heck? Yeah. It's just a ground plate. That is stupid, because they didn't do it to this battery. This is just positive and negative. That is just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so what you may run into, this unit is actually the transmitter. So your transmitter may have this ground. You won't likely need this ground when you put in a new battery. And you know what? We're going to confirm that for you right now, if you actually need that ground there or not. I figure this set is done for anyways, because this one busted, and this is a transmitter. So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to snip that very carefully. So let's power it up. Okay, now your transmitter, that one light won't come back on. I think I can sliver this to get at the switch. There we go. So there's our receiver. Now your receiver light, when it's connected, will come on. And okay, so the unit binds. So you don't need that little ground tap wire. It's useless. I don't know what, and it doesn't even connect to anything anyways. It's just a ground shield. I mean, that's it right there. That's absolutely dumb. Because to desolder that would be a real pain in the neck. Anyways, so the batteries you're going to need. Let me turn the power off on this thing here. These are 3.7 volt. I'm just trying to get the milliamp reading here for you. There's a lot of different places you can get the batteries. I'm sure Xvive has the batteries. But if you did go third party for batteries, it's just a matter of having the right milliamp, and that is pulling apart. If I remember right from the other ones, they were like 500 milliamp. Yeah, that all pulled off. Yeah, okay. You know what? Let me come right back. Okay guys, so it turns out it is a 500 milliamp battery. Anyhow, so reassembly time. Once you've changed out this battery, now this ground thing, if one of the two batteries has that little ground thing, you can unsolder it and use it, but I don't see any reason why you'd need it. And the other unit didn't have one anyhow, so I don't know why this one would. But whatever, this is the transmitter, and that's the way they had it. So if that's the way you get your batteries and you have this on one of the batteries, you will solder it only to the transmitter one. If you get both batteries that each have one, do not solder it to the receiver side, because the receiver side did not have that. And as you can see, even on the board, it didn't have it. So no trace behind, so it didn't have one. So I don't know why they would even put that little piece of copper ground there, because it doesn't do anything. But hey, whatever. That's their thing. Now we got to get this thing back together and in one piece again. So you're going to need, if I remember right, this will go this way. This is going to go in like so, because you want that switch to sit right in the slot, right like that. Okay, so that has to go in just like so. I'll sit it there a little longer for you. That's how it should look on reassembly. Now this is the top part of the unit. Okay, now your two little shorty screws, the shortest ones in your pile. Do not over tighten these screws. And like I said, make sure you use the proper fitting screwdriver. And I stress the fact that this is a very delicate operation to do, because when you snap things back together, if something's not quite right, be careful taking it apart. I was being very careful, and I still managed to snap the switch on this one. And it was actually the physical switch, the little tit that the switch cover goes into, that got snapped. So you gotta be really careful. Like, stuff happens, just, you know already. I'm glad it happened to me and not to you guys, because you'd freak out. So now at least you know how to avoid freaking out. Be very, very careful. And when you tighten these down, same thing. Do not go really tight. Go till they stop. Just add a little bit of snugness, and that's all you need to keep that in. So the next part to go back in is your channel changer button. And it goes back in only one way. And that is like so. Alright, so the little forks have to stick up, just like you see, because those little forks get lined up inside the bottom cover part. Now, there's a bit of glue left on here, and I'm not going to worry too much, so I'm just going to sit it in there. But change these wires out one at a time on the battery. It's going to make your life less hassle, because without looking with a magnifying glass, the board is probably marked either on the top or the bottom, but to see it with your eyeballs, you're not going to see it. So you're going to want to just change out the one wire, put the new battery with that wire color in, then do the other one, which will detach this completely, and then your new battery will be in. And use a very fine tip soldering iron. I'm not kidding. There's very close quarters, and if you slop solder from one end to another, you're going to cause a short, and you're going to see this thing puff and go boom. Okay? So, delicate thing to do. You know, I mean, if you're afraid of doing this, get somebody who is really good at soldering that's not going to mess up. Alright? So, I've done stuff like this, fine detail like this, many times in the past. Never a problem. You know, this is, you know, not my first rodeo taking these wireless units apart, but I still managed to make a boo-boo, which has now costed this set to be useless. Okay, it only takes one little mistake, you know, so just be aware. Now this has to sit free for now, because this is where things get dicey. You've got to make sure that that cover goes on proper. Now you'll see a notch at the back of the cover inside, and you'll see a little latch here. So you want to get it sitting like this, so that everything sits across even, and then it'll just sit into place just nice, and voila. Okay? Now we check our switch. Everything's functioning fine. Button clicks. We're golden. The worst of it's now over. Now these little rings, they have little notches in them. Okay? So you gotta line the notches up right in order for them to go on. And you look at where the thick part is here. It's going towards the outside. Same deal on this side. Put it towards the outside. So we'll get this one put in first. Get it lined up. That side's in. Now we have the space to put this side in. Okay, now that that's all in, now we're going to put these two screws into the bottom first. And remember, they're both the exact same length, and your last screw is going to be a longer one. Go till it stops, and one little snug, that's it. That's all that you need. Now, you got the little pin here. It goes into the pinhole here on your connector. Just like so. Hold that in place. That's the top side. This is the bottom side. Hold them together. Your screw goes right in the same hole it came out of. Make sure you put this screw in first before you try putting the sleeve back over. Make things a lot easier for you, less fumbling around. This one you want to snug up just a little bit extra from the other screws. Now, you got the notch here, and you have the notch hole. Make sure they line up, and it just snaps right in. Boom, done. Okay? And we're rock and roll. That is how you go about changing the battery. Now, I wasn't going to sit here and desolder stuff because I have no need to change these out, and it would make the video way too long. So explaining it should be more than good enough. And, you know, like I said, I did have a problem when I first started doing this video, which is why I redid it, because I figured, well, this sucks. But I wanted to let you know about it, that, yeah, one little boo-boo is all it takes. Because these little switch tits that come off these switches are very, very fine. You know, and you can abuse that switch back and forth like a madman and not hurt it. But when it comes to reassembling this thing, the slightest bit that's off when you snap that cover, that's what can bugger that switch. It can happen. And it did happen to me, which kind of trashed this set. But that's okay. I don't mind. You know, at least you know that you have to be that careful taking things apart, putting them back together, okay? And like I said, these are lithium polymer batteries, so you got to be careful when you take these apart. You know, don't use the screwdriver tip until you've pried up enough that you can just kind of slice at the glue. It kind of comes up and you can see the glue, and you can kind of slice at the glue, and that'll help break it free a lot easier. And it is tedious, as you've seen in the video, to do this. You can do it. It's not that it's difficult. It's very tedious, requires patience, and making sure that you do not screw up on the reassembly side, because one little boo-boo and there goes your switch. And you could replace this switch if you could get a replacement, which I'm sure online there are zillions of places where you could get a replacement switch if you needed it, if you did break it. But it is going to be very delicate to try and replace that, because that is top side board soldering. That's not through board. At least it doesn't appear to be. So that would still be, either way, very tedious to replace that switch if you do break it. So try not to, because it'll suck. Anyways, hopefully this video helped. I'm sure it did help show you that, you know, a mistake can happen. You can break it, so be very cautious. Like I said, as far as this little ground piece goes, I don't see any useful purpose for that whatsoever, because they had it only on the one. They didn't have it on the receiver, just on the transmitter, and it's like, that doesn't do anything. Like, that wouldn't even, I don't even think you could actually construe that as being an antenna, to be honest, because they would have to have one on each. So it's not an antenna, it's just a ground that doesn't really, I don't see where it does anything, to be honest. But if you do get it on the replacement battery, then do solder it in. You can just unsolder it real easy, because that's an easy connection to actually get at, to unsolder and solder a new one in, you know, or save this one and cycle it in to the new battery, but only on the receiver, not the transmitter side. So, but that's just my idea and opinion on that one, you know. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like I said, when it comes time to change your batteries in your Xvive unit, know that it is a very delicate procedure, and something goes wrong, well, it's gonna suck. So there you go. Well, now I got another transmitter that actually still works, so yeah, we'll have some fun with it, I guess. Anyways, catch ya.